So we are discussing the book of Gutsy Women. It's my okay, and it's by Hillary Clinton and her daughter Chelsea. What's her? Chelsea Clinton. Okay, and then the last time we left off, we were talking about um, Margaret Chase Smith. She was like one of those front runners of women that were in the House and in the Senate and tried to run for presidency, and she stepped into her husband's shoes that passed away, and that's kind of where we stopped talking. So I'm gonna tell you guys like the little sections because I hope we can finish a whole page. So right now we're on early inspirations, then it's going to be educational pioneers, earth defenders, and exploring and inventors, and I don't think we'll get much past that. That we're going to try to cover that today, but we're going to go real quick.
Okay,
so then the next,
what page did we stop? Because, you know, my thing went out last time.
Yeah, so we are going to start on page 34.
34?
I know, we didn't get nowhere.
Okay. That's why we're still on the inspirations then.
Yeah, and we're going to just skim through them.
Okay.
So her name is Margaret Brokey White, and she was the first female war correspondent. And she actually was like in the war, reporting, taking pictures, you know, doing those things that reporters do. And it was hard for her to do because they didn't let women do it. So, I mean, I think she was, do you want to say anything about her, Mom? One of her things was that nothing is more attractive to her than a closed door. Like if somebody tells her she can't do something, that makes her want to do it. And that's why she was so edgy and trying to do all those things that they never let women do. But you know, she became the first foreign photographer to gain unlimited access to the region in 1930. The Soviet Union and Germany. I mean, she did everything. She went everywhere during very risky times and was reporting, taking pictures.
Then we watched across Germany, and she took photographs of the camps and all that. The first photographs pretty much from her.
Yep.
And Life Stuff called her Maggie the Indestructible.
Because she got like shot at, bombed at, had a plane crash. She had all kinds of stuff happen to her because she was always right in the battle when she was reporting. And then the next one is the Van Trapp. That's from The Sound of Music. I thought this was interesting too.
Maria von Trapp.
Huh?
Maria von Trapp.
Yeah. She was a nun, and then the people in the nunnery kind of told her, well, maybe being a nun isn't for you. And then she went and she became a nanny for the Van Trapp family. Is that kind of her story, Mom?
Because his wife died, and so she was a nanny, and the nuns also encouraged her to take that job and go there.
Yeah. And I don't know. I thought that was,
yeah.
I really watched The Sound of Music a lot when I was a kid, so it was interesting to read that because it kind of gave you a little bit more information about her because it really wasn't like The Sound of Music. There was kind of something else going on there. And then the next lady is Anne Frank. And it just talks about
yeah, her book, you know, her notes while she was hidden up there in the attic.
And she talks about the helpers, the people that help them, and I think what made the Anne Frank's diary so special is that it was just a regular teenage girl experience about this horrible thing she went through. And when she was writing and in her journal, she was well, number one, she obviously was skilled in literature because she made other people feel the feelings she was feeling, but it was just her honest emotions about how she felt about every day. She wasn't always happy every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it tells you that she died in a concentration camp, you know,
Really
which is,
hard for these teenagers to stay quiet up there and not make noise. You know, could you imagine nowadays a teenager, no music, nothing?
I can't get my kids to be quiet, so I don't know. But I thought that was really,
And Frank's house sometime one time years ago. You see this little quarters under the roof, you know, and the whole family and everyone was there. You had no privacy.
yeah. Let's see.
And then comes a Guatemalan woman.
Yes. You want to talk about her, Mom?
She experienced, you know, Guatemala had about a 30-year civil war, and these soldiers, that's one of the reasons why Guatemala has a good infrastructure with streets and everything into the mountainous area where other countries down there don't have it, because the military went all the way up in these areas and harassed the, the Mayans. He's one of the Kichi Mayan.
Yeah.
And yeah, so they went through a lot.
Yeah.
And even, you know, later on, some kind of said whatever she wrote is not true. It didn't happen to her also, but it's kind of the whole village, a collective.
Even if it didn't
Story.
happen to her, she was just
For
sharing
her,
that history and the reality of that for her or other women. So there's no
certain
disagreeing with
things
that.
that she described and didn't really happen to her. It happened to a cousin or whatever. But because the whole village is so close, it's kind of like her own experience too.
Yeah.
That one guy wanted that they take the Nobel Prize away because that's not correct or whatever, but they didn't do it. They got it, you know, that was some kind of a collective story, more or less.
Yeah. And then the next one is Jackie Joyner Kersey and Florence Griffith Joyner. So that they're like sister-in-laws, I think.
Sisters.
I thought they were sister-in-laws through marriage.
Both have Joyner in their name. Just one, that's maiden name, Joyner.
Okay. All right. I knew it was something like that. And they're from here, aren't they? East St. Louis?
Yeah, from the area here.
Yeah.
St. Louis, Illinois. They grew up there in the middle of East St. Louis, next door to a liquor store and all this, and they had aspirations that they wanted to do something with their life, you know.
Yeah. And the really cool thing is that during one of the Olympics, she sprained her hamstring and she still got a silver medal. I was like, wow, that's painful.
So Griffith Joyner, she died, I think, on cancer or whatever it was. The other one is still alive, and they also have like a closing line, and you know, they kind of worked a lot. And
Yep. And then the next section is the education and pioneers. So in this section, it's what's this person's name?
it's Sor Juan Inés de la Cruz. She
Yeah.
lived 1648 to 1695, and you know, she was in a kind of pretty good family, you know, with some privileges and so, but she wanted to study and learn and read, and you know, that was a no-no kind of pretty much. So, but she borrowed books from her grandfather's library, and then she was reading, and the only way you could basically do a lot of things like this is in a nunnery, you know.
Yeah.
It's also like a lot of these books in the Middle Ages that were all handwritten. A lot of them were handwritten by nuns, but they wouldn't get the credit because they're women, you know.
Yeah. And she became a nun, right, Mom?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the next one is Margaret Bancroft.
Let me see.
She was the lady that took an interest in children that had a hard time studying.
Oh, yeah.
She found a new way of teaching children that were having difficulties. And then I think she opened up a school where she taught other people how to teach children like that. Isn't that the?
Well, she was an advocate for deaf and blind children to take a more individualist approach to education in her writings, because other people called them idiots and imbecile and so.
Yeah.
And no, They have the same intellect or perhaps better, more than you, just they need a different approach how to learn. She worked with children who had trouble and disabilities and so, and she kind of.
And a lot of her children went to Special Olympics, and she taught a lot. Many of the early leaders in the 20th century special ed trainer were trained under her, because she had a special school to teach teachers how to be with special ed children.
Yeah, they were always excluded from school. They were hidden at home or putting in some kind of a crazy asylum place, you know.
And then the next one.
Children as well as severe disabled adults, you know.
Yeah.
Needed her help to eventually get jobs. Most of her kids she trained or whatever, without her, they would never have gotten any job or been able to be a productive person, you know.
Yeah, she made a big difference in a lot of people's and a lot of families' lives.
School.
And then the next one is Juliet Gordon Lolo.
Juliet Gordon Low.
She was the Girl Scout lady.
Yeah.
She created the American Girl Scouts.
1860 to 1927.
And it was all about how girls can help their country.
And she also, during World War II, helping to be nurses and support the soldiers.
Yep.
And her thing being a Girl Scout is being healthy and industrious, you know, doing things. And she was also a lot for, you know, reading, as reading it has such a lasting effect on your mind and your, you know, how you see the rest of the world if you read a lot and also about other people.
And then the next educators were Maria Montessori and Joe Gans Cooney.
And Joe Gans Cooney, yeah.
So one was a pediatrician, and the other one was, is it the lady that created Sesame Street?
When you are freezing, can you hear me or no?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so she lived from 1870 to 1952. So she had that individual approach to kids, doing things and learning by doing a lot.
What was that Montessori way of teaching? How you let a kid learn on their level and you just keep escalating the learning, like how they do out there at Lewis and Clark.
She created the Casa dei Bambini, the house for the little kids.
Yeah.
In Italy. And then in America, there was Joan Gans Cooney. She kind of was basically the creator from the puppet show, you know, teaching kids by showing and engaging them.
And they tried to take it off the air because she had black and white children on the television set, but it got put back on. You remember that, Mom?
Yeah, I remember that.
That was really crazy. And then the next one is Mary McLeroy Bethune. I think she's the lady that created the NAACP.
Wasn't she a doctor? The first, no. I think it's after Civil War. South Carolina.
So she was the lady that got picked to go to school, and then she came home from school and taught her parents how to read.
Oh yeah.
She taught the rest of her family how to read. She ended up opening, like, I think one of the first Black colleges. She ended up being a nurse. She opened up a nursing school. She believed in vocational, just put it down, babe. She believed in vocational training. I think she did some stuff for the military. She worked with a bunch of presidents.
Yeah,
she did a whole bunch of stuff.
Because she had this black school in Jacksonville, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And
And I think it all started because when she was little, she was going to be a missionary. And they told her they didn't need any more missionaries. And she was like, what? She wanted to be a missionary in Africa.
Yeah, but
And then she just took it
on.
on to educate and teach people here in America, which is such a blessing to us because she did so many things.
Yeah, she was the one who founded the National Council of Negro Women,
Yes.
and also she was encouraged by Eleanor Roosevelt, you know, because just as a black woman talked, Eleanor Roosevelt, Eleanor took her under her wings and, you know, and talked to her husband. So they created that special program for black people. By the end of her life, she worked on several different committees. She helped organize, yeah, as I said, the National Negro Women Associated and the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. She
Yeah.
also was there. And then during the World War II, she served as a Women Army Corps. And
I'm just going to read this thing that this is one of her quotes. I leave you love, I leave you hope, I leave you the challenge of developing confidence in one another. I leave you thirsty for education, and I leave you respect for the use of power. I leave you faith. I leave you radical racial dignity. I leave you a desire to live harmoniously with your fellow men. I leave you a responsibility to our young people. She really did a lot.
yeah,
She was busy her whole life educating and doing things for other people. She is a wonderful person to like really dig deeper in and learn more about her.
a lot of other people then to follow in her footsteps and do
Yeah.
things.
And then there was this Esther Marquise. She was a Native American. She was in a, what is this? She was, what is it?
She was from Hispaniola, one of these islands.
No, she was the Native American. We're on page 75.
Oh, she was the one who did the language.
Yeah, she kept her Indian language alive and wrote it down and dictated it so that it wouldn't die out. Now, she wasn't allowed to practice speaking in school, but she always spoke it with other people. She used to get in trouble for this. And then
that aggressive assimilation program that didn't want the Indians to have their own identity.
yes. And thank God, I mean, they said, you know, a lot of languages have been lost, but hers isn't. And that's so interesting that I didn't even realize like that was one of those things that was going on. But I guess that is horrible because they're like robbing you of who you are because they don't even want you to speak your own language.
Yeah, she went back to her grandma and, you know, took up some input from her because, you know, she wasn't as good at the language as she wanted to be because they kind of tried to eradicate her language.
Yeah, and in the end, it says the best way to respect her would be to encourage the American government to help restore all Native American languages. Like that's what she wants. So that was interesting. Then the next one is Daisy Bates.
Oh, her mother got killed and the police never really checked it out because, you know, that wasn't worthwhile their time.
And she said, if you're gonna hate somebody, don't just hate them because they're white. Make it count for something. That's what make it count for something. Hate the humility we are living under in the South. Hate the discrimination that eats away at the South. Hate the discrimination that eats away at the soul of every black man and woman, and hate the insult hurled at us by white scum, and then try to do something about it. Or your hate won't spell a thing. That was one of her little quotes.
And she is the second Black American woman chosen by a state to join the collection alongside fellow education trailblazer Mary McLean, the one we just talked about. That they have a statue from her,
Yeah,
This is
that's
kind
cool
of,
too.
when you should have statues, not these, whatever.
Yeah, not those other disrespectful stuff. And then the next thing is Patsy Mink, Bernice Sandler, and Edith Green.
Betsy Mink is a Japanese lady living in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Didn't they get her dad and put him in one of these camps?
And she says that experience taught her that you cannot take your American citizenship for granted.
Yeah.
Because when you do, and somebody does something like that to you, like, so I thought that was interesting. She became the first student president at her high school and Congress and won in 1964, becoming one of the 13 women serving at the time. So I think like all these women, they kind of struggled with that. They're very outgoing and there's a lot of discrimination.
They fight for their rights.
Yeah.
Because her husband was not born in Hawaii, they said her bar exam is not good anymore. She had to take it again or whatever, some BS like that. Remember that?
Yeah.
She fought for her right to take the exam and won. Then what was it, Bunny?
And I think because of what they did, President Johnson prohibited any federal contracts for discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, or national origin.
Yeah, all these women have degrees and they were the best in their class, but they always had to fight for, they had to apply for 20 different schools or whatever before they could get anywhere.
Yeah. And a lot of them were just.
In 97, in the 70s, we filed a complaint against all universities and colleges in America on behalf of all women in higher education.
And it talks about how hard it was for them to go to college because colleges wouldn't accept them. They weren't accepting hardly any women.
Yeah, and they held them to a higher standard than the men.
Yeah.
And like in the veterinary medicine, they only accepted 2 women per year. So they had a quota,
2 women, that's crazy.
Men and 2 women were allowed to come like this.
And then those women, they all helped to get the title, what is that? On page 80. Yeah, Title IX.
Who just testified about the discrimination they had experienced. They testified in front of the Congress. And with the help of Representative Mink and Green, Title IX was drafted, passed, and signed into law in 1972 by President Nixon, requiring equal opportunity for boys and girls in education. Yep. But it would take nearly 5 more years before the law was really enforced.
Yeah, just like everything.
They were all fighting against it and whatever, and all kind of lawsuits.
And then the next person is Ruby Bridges Hall. That's that little girl that went to school for the whole year by herself.
I had to go and take her to school because I didn't want her.
Yeah. And decades later, she remained a believer in the power of love and one person's ability to make a positive difference. And racism is a grown-up disease, and we must stop using our children to spread it. That's so true.
And Chelsea, she said, what we did not learn then, and I wish we had, was how segregated our schools still are a result of many racist legacy, including white flight and redlining, a form of housing discrimination.
Yeah, I had that highlighted too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what, like, Obama tried to get rid of these housing, that in the suburbs you cannot have a little center or apartment building because these rich white people didn't want, and now Trump reversed that. And he's kind of telling everyone that Biden would devalue their houses if they vote him, because he would be reinstating that.
Yeah, and then the next person is the Malala
Malala
Yousafzai,
Yousafzai,
and I think, and
her
again,
dad, yeah, her dad believed into educating his women, even it wasn't custom there, you know. They
and they
came,
attacked her for it. She was shot or something, wasn't she?
they several times closed his schools or kept them from, and then and she always went back and she fought for her out, and she was in the bus driving to school or from school when a couple of these idiots come in and shot her. But
Yeah,
she survived. I think she lives in Canada. I've seen her on a live interview not too long ago.
yeah, and so that's interesting because she's a pretty young person.
Yeah,
That's
she
like
was
actually,
97, so she's only 23 years old.
yeah. So, and the area where this was going on wasn't that northern Pakistan?
Yeah, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Northwest Pakistan. Yeah, and the Taliban came out. How dare the Taliban take away my basic right to an education? She blogged anonymously for BBC Urdu about life under Taliban's rule. You know, and they kind of found out it was her, and that's why they went on. They boarded her school bus and tried to kill her.
Yeah, that's horrible.
But
And
she
then
didn't.
in the next section, it's going to be about Earth defenders, and then Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. She's the first one.
She was born 1890 and she passed away in 1998. She was talking about the Floridians, that they don't value the Everglades. You know, all the drinking water pretty much comes from there, and so if they don't protect it and save it, they kind of mess themselves up.
Yeah, and a lot of her life was just dedicated to preserving the Everglades in Florida, but she also tackled issues related to public health, urban planning, women's suffrage, civil rights, prohibition, and also wrote essays, plays, and books. In the early 1940s, she found what would be the work of the second half of her life, celebrating preserving the Everglades. So she did a whole bunch of stuff, but that was her main thing at the end, the Everglades.
It's a vital, unique ecosystem, which is necessary for your own health. So it's all related, you know. If you mess up the Everglades, you mess up your health and your environment and all that.
And then the next lady is Rachel Carson.
She's from 1907 to 1964. Santa Barbara oil spill.
She was really into the ocean and also the environment. She called the ocean the Mother Sea and gently urged her readers to orientate themselves in the wider circle of nature and to understand, as she did, that the planet is wild and wonderful, precious and delicate, urgent and in need of protection. So she's one of those founding people that wanted to start doing some things because she saw big business messing up our planet.
And her attention to the pesticides. So John F. Kennedy's administration went to work investigating the problem, and the president himself acknowledged the role that Silent Spring, that's one of the books she wrote, played in focusing the government's attention on the danger of pesticides.
Yeah.
And she would be, and you know, DDT was banned, and now under Trump, it's again kind of semi-okay.
Yeah. And she just reminded people there is no planet B. It's just this planet. Once we screw it up, there's no place for us to go. And then the next one is Jane Jacobs and Peggy Shepard. and she talked a lot about city planning and about how, you know, inappropriate city planning harmed people's lives.
She was also, you know, with the McCarthyism because she was she wrote for that pro-American Russian language magazine. So she was hounded by McCarthyism and investigated by the FBI because of her beliefs.
Yeah, and she
But
really
I do not
focused on,
extremist of either the left or the right, but I think they should be allowed to speak and to publish both because they themselves have and ought to have rights, and once their rights are gone, the rights of the rest of us are hardly safe. That's what we now have to watch out too.
yeah. And they, I don't know, we could go on and on about them. But then the next one is Jane Goodall and the Trimates. And that was those three ladies that worked with the monkeys, and one of them died. And
yeah, Jane Goodall, she was with the chimps, and then there was what's her name?
Lori Guthbert.
Yeah, it's Birute Vadikas.
Oh yeah, it's on page 112. The other two chicks that followed in her footprints. They're all under that Dr. Leakey, who encouraged them to do these studies.
Yeah, Gautika and Diane Fossey. Birut Gautika, she was the one who went to Indonesia to study the orang-utans.
And they really tried to work with people about porching and preserving, you know, the wildlife, and just, you know, respecting the life of the area that they were in. They created these conservations?
Conservation areas, yeah.
And I bet the one that died probably was killed by a porch, you know, one of those people that were against what she was talking about.
Yeah.
And then the next lady is Vangari Maathai. Am I saying that right? On page 114?
Maathai
I don't know.
from Kenya. He was also for the environment.
Yep.
She moved to Kansas to study biology, and after she got her master's in Pittsburgh, she returned to Kenya for further studies. She completed her PhD in veterinary anatomy there. And she was also working to get these safe places for the animals to protect the environment.
Yeah, I think they called it the Green Belt Movement.
And they have always a lot of enemies because, you know, like the ones that want to burn down the jungle for cattle grazing or things like that, you know, they don't like this environment.
So this Green Belt Movement, it was a party responding to needs identified by rural women, mainly lack of firewood, clean drinking water, balanced diet, shelter, and income. Throughout Africa, women are the primary caregivers, holding significant responsibilities for tilling the land and feeding their families. As a result, they are the first to become aware of environmental damages as resources become scarce and incapable of sustaining their families. And then that little movement, over time, the Green Belt movement grew to encompass protecting disability rights, minority rights, women's rights, and democracy, along with an ambition to fight poverty, protection of the human right of everyone in Kenya. So she did a lot. The next lady is Alice Min So Chun.
She's the one who did the solar lights.
The lights, yeah. I thought you might want to say something about it because I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, she kind of is also an environmentalist and
She just looked for ways to incorporate solar energy into everyday life for people that did not have electricity or anything like that, because there were so many children getting burned, through this.
and the company she was working did not want to go with her ideas, so she founded her own company, and she kind of donated lots of these lights, and they are not like these cheap little solar lights you get here. They are pretty powerful because the kids at night could do their homework in Haiti when they had the earthquakes and the disasters. The solar puffs, that's what they were
So not
called.
only was she reducing, people were burning in their homes from these fires sometimes because they were unattained, and then homes would burn and children would get hurt or family members would get hurt. But also there was this smoke issue, which was creating a health issue for all those people. So she resolved both those problems with this light for those people that don't have electricity and use, other sources of light, which would have been actual fire. Isn't that right, Mom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what she said about what I realized was that children are the best teachers in the world. She said, even more powerful than the sun is the light in your mind, your imagination.
Yeah, she says people on the street started calling the solar puffs the cube of hope, because it like really changed your home if you had one of those.
Yeah.
What I realized was the children are, oh, you read that, okay. And then the next one is Gertrude Thunberg.
Greta Thunberg.
Greta, oh, sorry. She's German, right?
No, she's Scandinavian.
Oh, Scandinavian, okay. And she's the climate girl, and her mom's like a actress or something, and
Asperger.
yes. So it's a form of autism, but they just fixate on certain things and they have a harder time socializing, but they actually are very highly intelligent children because they're able to really concentrate on things that they want to learn or do. And her fixation is this environment thing, which, is just her passion. Her disability actually makes her so more effective in her passion because she's really into it. So didn't she get a Nobel Peace Prize?
No, not yet.
No, she got something.
But her parents are kind of also very, they woke up that environmental, in her. That
Oh,
she's kind
she
of
does that. Don't they on Fridays like strike or something?
Yeah, she went on strike instead of going to school. She went to
Yeah.
what is it, the government house, and was striking for climate change. The Riksdag, so it's like, parliament. School strike for climate. First she was all by herself, and then she just went on Fridays, and suddenly she got people that came with her and also was
And some of them are like 1.6 million people, showing up, like all doing it on Fridays together all around the world. So that's cool. Explorers and inventors. We're getting there.
You were frozen. I don't know what you said, but
We're doing explorers and inventors now. I think this is going to be the last little topic that we cover.
Explorers and inventors. Okay, we have Caroline Herschel. She lived 1750 to 1848. And then here we have Vera Rubin, 1928 to 2016. Herschel, she was a midget. She was sick as a kid and then she didn't grow anymore. She was born in Hanover. No, not Hamburg, in Hanover. Yeah, she had contracted typhus.
Wasn't she actually like, they were the solar system people. Yeah, they were into space.
So she discovered a certain
she discovered some cosmos and stuff, right?
Yeah, and one is also named after her. I think, what is it? I think 8 different ones. How many did? She would go on to discover 8 in total. the comets.
Yep.
Caroline is now known as the first woman ever to discover a comet, and she discovered a total of 8. Her brother went to England, and so she went with him.
As
And
his
he was a
assistant.
singer, and she was very good singing too. However, then he kind of developed that hobby of astronomy, and them together, her and him, they built the biggest microscope, and that's how they could discover that.
Yep. And then the
She was
next,
person actually being paid. The British government gave her a pension then and paid her.
yeah, and she was one of the first women to get this award.
No woman ever would be so honored again until 1996, almost 170 years later.
I know. And Ada Lovelace and Grace Hopper. I think Grace Hopper is the other one that got the award. So Grace Hopper helped build the first computer or computer language, changing numbers into symbols and other ways to program.
That it took her a long time to believe that she was a real astronomer because, you know, that was a man's world. They didn't want her in. And she also received the gold medal of the Royal Astronomical Society.
Yeah.
And then we have Ada Lovelace
and they call her the prophet of the computer age because she made that idea come to life. She was the first person to think of computers beyond calculators.
That was Ada Lovelace's place, yeah.
Yeah, they both did a lot of stuff that made computers possible. Then the next lady is Margaret Knight and Madam J.C. Walker.
Madam J.C. Walker, she had a business in St. Louis, in Missouri.
Yep. So, and she made a factory.
Yeah.
For her cosmetic line.
Hair and wigs, and then she made all kind of cosmetics and so.
And that Margaret Knight, she was like an inventor too, and she shared her inventions sometimes with people, her ideas, and people had she had to take some people to court because they tried to steal her patent because they were men and thought they had the rights to it because she was a woman. And one of them was like how to make a paper bag for groceries.
Yeah, and that device for textile looms, you know, when they worked with 12, 13, she saw how some kids got really injured very bad. And so
I think that was her first big invention.
Yeah.
So anytime she saw a problem, she was the kind of person that was like, how can I create something to fix this problem? And then the next one is Marie Curie and Urbain Jolette Curie. And they helped like with x-rays and radiation. Yeah, and they helped with x-rays and radiation. I think they had to do a majority of their work in Paris because people weren't recognizing scientists that were women. And they
were born in, you know, Marie Curie was born in Warsaw, but she couldn't get to school there. So she went to Paris. That's where she met her husband then. And her daughter was born in Paris, but they both died also on radiology inflicted, you know, problems because of their exposure.
Yeah, and they helped like the forefront of chemo treatment and just a lot of radiation things, the x-ray imaging, like without them, none of that would have been possible because they really, they made their work like their life.
Are you still there?
Yeah.
The Curie family is the one family with the most Nobel Prizes.
I know, because I think the daughter got 2, the mom got 1, and the dad got 1.
Yeah, I think the mom has 2, but shared with the dad because they work together.
And she got 1 in physics and in chemistry. She was the first person to get in 2 different areas.
Yeah.
Those people were super smart. Then the next one is that Hedy Lamarr. She was that actress that was also an inventor.
Yeah.
And she invented a way for the military to communicate without somebody else listening in on their radio talk.
Yeah, but first they didn't want to believe her and kind of, put it aside, but now then later on they used it.
Yeah. So,
How
and
can a woman do something useful, huh?
I know they wanted her to just be an actress, but she actually was an inventor. That was her main thing. But people didn't, respect her in that area. So her other thing was like movies. She was versatile.
Yeah, she hated playing the doting host to her husband's business partners because she was a person of her own,
And then the next one is Sylvia Earle. She was the lady that did all that work in the ocean.
For the ocean, yeah.
And she just really focused on all these things that are in the ocean. She was, and
And
she
the impact of pollution for the coral reef.
and she kind of did work for NASA too, because being in the ocean is similar to being in space.
Mm.
And then the next one is Sally Ride. She was the lady
NASA's.
picked. There was like a name for them because it was
Yeah, when she was little, she said that's what she wanted to go to NASA, but they said, oh, they don't take girls. But by the time she grew up, she could.
Didn't she play tennis?
Yeah.
Like she was play tennis and then she ended up, something happened, like she got her, or her forearm wasn't that good. She said, if my forearm would have been better, I probably wouldn't have been doing this today. She said that once, like in an interview or something, because they were like, how did you pick? Like, how did you know, like you wanted to do something more than play tennis? She was like, well, that's easy. I didn't have a strong forearm. And then the next lady that went to space is Mai Jensen.
Mae Jensen, yeah. Yeah, she was deciding if she wants to go dance professionally or go to college. She chose the later one and went to Stanford.
Yeah. And she's one of the ladies that's in the NASA Lego set. I didn't know that.
Hmm. You never played with Lego much.
No. I mean, I do now, but I didn't back then.
But Chelsea wants to buy it for her kids as soon as they're old enough.
And I think we can stop there because that's like a lot of information. But all in all, the book is like so interesting if you take your time and read every little section, because it's a lot of history in this book that people really aren't taught, because we just aren't taught about these women,
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because they've done so much. They were such great people. They dedicated their lives to their causes, and some of them paid with their lives.
And quite often, a lot of things women did were attributed to their husbands.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. So what do you think, Mom? I think it is like harder read for somebody that just likes reading fiction and action adventure or whatever, or romance novels. But I think it's a book that you can put on the shelf. You can read it with your children, your grandchildren. You can read one little section at a time. You can bust it out when somebody has to do a report or a writing.
Decide to do something, have some kind of inspiration. When I grew up, I would like to do that, but then they say, oh, the boys in my school, that's not a girl job or whatever. You can look in this book and you probably found someone that went that avenue and basically prepared the way for her to go that way if she wants to, really, as long as you put your mind to it and get the grades that go with it and so, and work hard, and if it's something you like, you automatically work harder.
Yeah. So I think out out of 5, it is a 5. It's just not the kind of book where you sit and you read it and you're like, oh, I got done with this book today. Like, it's the kind of book where you're like constantly reading and then looking stuff up on the internet and then finding more out about these people, which is kind of why it's taken us a while to read about them. And it's like a fun book if you have a young child in your home that's doing projects and research and things like that. Even in college, it's
a teenager, so you know, to just
young child, college, teenager. Like, I mean, I'm 40 something. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, you don't have to read the, you know, for kids or teenager. You just pick a couple of people that
Exactly.
think they can relate to and read that, and then make an assignment to research a little more about it instead of the 2 pages that are in the book here, you know.
Yeah. So I think it is a really great book. It probably is a harder read for somebody that just wants to read a book, but it's a great book. Like if you're trying to get information, if you want to know more about the world and the people in it, and if you are interested in finding out more about the awesome things that women have done that have just been accredited to men, or, you know, haven't really been discussed because they're not in history books for some reason. Well,
somehow it just happens to be there, whatever was invented, you know. We don't really know who invented it because we don't really care. We don't want to know because it probably was a woman.
exactly. That's what
And
happened. Or a
so
lot
you
of times
know,
it was nuns.
yeah, and
That did
every
research
successful
and did
man
things.
is a woman
The only
because,
ones allowed to explore and invent back in the day.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think it is a great book. We're going to end it on this note. I know this was probably like way longer than we wanted to, but I'm just showing you like how much information is in here, and we're not even halfway through the book. Like we're on page 163. Yeah, so we're on page 163. There's 400 some pages in here. There's different sections, and it's just a great tool. We're going to come again next Thursday. We were just making up for the Thursday before. I couldn't do it. I had a lot of stuff going on inside my house. So next week we're going to come back and read like maybe up to 250 or 300, and then the next week after that we'll read again. But then we're just going to stop because we're not going to be able to cover all these women. But I did want to take one of these book club days and just really give you guys the meat of it. When all 4 of us get back together, we might just each talk about a woman, you know, make it more personal. Okay, peace and love. Like and subscribe. We thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, my love.